Anyway, I like to begin my talks these days with a picture of me looking happy. And to point out to everybody that I am an optimistic person, I am a hopeful person. I've got no optimism about the future, and I've got no hope for our species, but I don't need that. I've got hope for other things. But to illustrate the reason I have no hope on a global scale, here's a quick video I took from a van when I was with my band, who are from Wales. We were in Brazil, touring, October 2022, and we're driving between Sao Paulo and Rio. These are wildfires, and nobody was coming to put them out. There's no evolutionary need for people from Wales to go to Brazil to play music. They've got bands in Brazil. They've got indie folk bands, indie rock bands in Brazil. What the fuck were we doing there? Playing to 1,200 people. It was wildly reckless, and I'm ashamed I'm a part in it. I'll come back to that point in a few minutes. For now, let's turn back to hope. I thought about peppering this talk with some hopeful stories. But for every good news story, there's some idiot who doesn't give a fuck about what needs to be done. And there's nature itself, which really, really doesn't give a fuck. So, in the face of disaster, where is hope? John Tarrant, among many others, have helped me domesticize my hope to make it about here and now. Or anyway, limit it till the end of the week. I hope when I call my father today, he's happy. I hope that when I speak to you guys at lunch or this evening, we have a nice time. I hope that tomorrow morning during my run, I hear birdsong again like I did this morning. I hope I don't hurt my foot in the sea as I did this morning. There's no point me being hopeful for the far future. There's no point me being hopeful for things I can't affect any change over. I can hope for an end to the war in Palestine, and I can keep checking the news every morning, but I'm just going to be disappointed and angry. It's futile for me to hope for anything that I can't affect any change over. Every time I hope for something, there's got to be a good chance that it can come true. That way, I see my hope being rewarded, and I build my resiliency for tougher things to come. No matter who you are, no matter how much money you have, disaster is coming for you. And for many, disaster is here. And we know it will hit the poorest the hardest. And we know no one will escape it. We know it's affecting the culture industries, including the live industries. You know what helped me reframe hope? COVID-19. It showed us that we can live as we used to live domestically before the 1950s, when we converted Second World War bombers into commercial passenger airlines. And we started to think it was normal and fine to fly across the world to see our friends. And we learned that governments, if they want, can act quickly and decisively to save the deaths of millions of people. Although, of course, when governments are the ones who are making money from the deaths, for example, through taxes from weapons manufacturers and oil and gas companies, you can appreciate why they're in no hurry to change things. The culture industries are trying. Good co-play, but not good enough. Try harder. This doesn't factor in that roughly 80% of all touring carbon emissions are from audience transport. A UK rock band called Bring Me the Horizon have produced, for me, the most comprehensive and most interesting, the most readable report into their own carbon footprint. And I had some fun with the figures. Note that less than 1/3 of their days on the road were actually used to commune together with the audience, something our species has been doing for 300,000 years, which is critically important to our development as a species. We need to commune together around music. We have to. It was language before, it was our language before we developed languages. Now, when we add audience transport, what does that look like? And what does that look like per audience member? Imagine that each fan carries 4.35 kilograms of CO2 to the show in a Bring Me the Horizon rucksack, and then, when the show's over, dumps it outside. Let's stay on merch for a moment. This is one of Taylor Swift's Eras Tour t-shirts, retails for about $40. And what's the average spend per person at these shows? So this means that roughly every person on the tour bought, well, let's just say they bought a t-shirt. Roughly speaking, they spent $40, they bought a t-shirt. When the Eras Tour is over, 6.1 million people will have seen the tour. And let's imagine they're all buying a t-shirt. What's the carbon cost of a t-shirt on average? That's manufacturing and the washing of it over its lifespan. So 6.1 million teas times 7 kilograms, which is 42.7 million kilograms, or 42,700 tons. What does 42,700 tons look like? Well, that's a ton of CO2. So 42,700 of these, what does that look like? The Empire State Building. Actually, sorry, no, 22 of those. Oh, I missed one. So, here's my idea. What do we think? Can I get a show of hands, please? A show of hands for this idea. It's a serious idea I want to discuss over the next few days. I want to try to see if we can work out how to do it. Can I get a show of hands? Who wants to engage in this conversation? We've got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Actually, we've got maybe 10, 12. A lot more than I thought I would get. Okay, for fun, I worked out last year how much water Metallica has used in manufacturing their T-shirts, only their T-shirts, since 1995. Let's have a look. Now, they've recently begun to use organic teas. That's about 243 litres per T-shirt. So, roughly speaking, flush your toilet 24 times, there's your T-shirt. But don't worry, I've got another idea. Once you're all done taking pictures of the slide. Second idea. Everyone's got 5 years to get used to the idea. New artists have got time to put in place new business models, knowing that in 5 years' time, they can't sell merch if they get to that level. Who's with me? All right. I'd still say we're by far in the minority here, right? Okay. Okay. Now, while you look at this, remember to feel hopeful. Because we can go for a swim later. And the food's quite good here. Who didn't like the food, by the way? Okay. It's sunny. See if you take a right and you walk down this way. It's really lovely and warm and quiet, and the bird song's dead nice, and you can smell, I don't know what it is, a lovely smell that you get in Los Feliz in Los Angeles in April when the flowers bloom. It's the same smell down there, and I'm looking forward to smelling that. I'm hopeful about that. Let me try something else, see if I can get you all on board. It's not about culture, but it will have a huge positive impact on the environment. There is hope. I got a show of hands, please. Come on. Next to not having a child is the single most impactful thing you can do for the environment. No? Cool. Let me try a different angle, probably my last angle, so I'm giving up in a minute. I'm really enjoying all the space I have, by the way. This is nice. These are both restrictions on freedom of movement. The first one we collectively agreed to through a social contract, red equals stop. In this case, if you don't comply, you risk your personal safety and the safety of those around you. You risk being fined, you risk your driving license. We all accept it, we're all fine with it. The second is a restriction on freedom of movement if you are, for example, a low-income family. That's a lot of money before you add the popcorn. Market forces are restricting your freedom of movement. You may not like it, but you have to accept it. You can't just walk in there and sit down and watch the film. You won't be allowed to do so. If you're Iranian, your passport will slow you down in many places. Even if you're Norwegian, you'll have to wait in line at passport control. You can't just walk out of the airport, you'll be stopped. Your freedom of movement is being restricted at passport control. Stop, you cannot go this way. These bollards restrict you and your car's freedom of movement. You can use this door, but only slowly at a pace that was being dictated by the person who designed it. You're fine with it. You're fine with this, right? It's a revolving door. Despite your movement being restricted, you're fine with it. Good luck if you're not fully able-bodied in a world designed by fully able-bodied people. We live our lives under countless restrictions of freedom of movement, but we don't recognize them as that. But that's what they are. You're out drinking in Bucharest and you want to get home late at night, but you cannot because the tram has stopped running. I'm sure you can get home via other methods, but in that moment, your freedom of movement was restricted, not stopped, but it was restricted. You had to accept it. Some restrictions will make you angry, some will make you feel safe, some will actually keep you and others safe. Some we've imposed upon us by other people through democratic processes, whether we like it or not. In my case, I've had to accept it. Some people actually choose to restrict their own freedom of movement and pretend they have freedom. Some people, simply because of where they were born, have no choice but to accept their movement is severely restricted. If you're this woman, your freedom of movement will be restricted by racism. Walls, fences, lines drawn on maps, which become borders. Turnstiles in the New York subway, you get the idea. Can we all agree that these are, in some form, restrictions of freedom of movement, and that we've agreed to most of them without even thinking about it, without deciding that was going to be fine for us? We just said, fine. The reported figure might not be accurate, but the point remains. The Singaporean Prime Minister did convince Taylor Swift and her team to play his country alone in the region instead of any of the other 10 Southeast Asian countries. And guess what happened? Airlines don't care when people burn lots of carbon because they can make lots of money when it happens. But it's not just fans of huge global artists who are flying around the world to watch artists. They do it for tiny ones as well that I manage. Go fuck yourself. Court. This fan will burn 2.7 kilograms of carbon CO2 to watch my artist play in a 300 capacity venue. So here's my final idea. We need to restrict this kind of freedom of movement. Promoters will not be allowed to book artists for a single show if they have to fly to get there. This includes festival shows, and Taylor Swift won't get around the ban by playing 6 shows in one city to make her life easier. So we can call number 1 a ban on what Taylor Swift did in Southeast Asia as well. She brings joy to millions. She's an artist, but she's also the system. She's become the system. And we've got to change the system. I'm not sure how. I'm not sure how we do this one, but we've got 3 days to work it out. Maybe we can tie it to voter registration. You can't buy a ticket unless you're on the voters' roll in that region, which will, of course, have the bonus of getting many more people sign up to vote. At least Coldplays were reusable. And one more, I thought of this one last night. We've already got the principle of polluter pays. Let's just double down on that. All right, can I get a show of hands for the first one, please? Can we try and work it out? We've got about 2 people, 3 people, 4, 5, including me, about 6. That's 7. Second idea, bit more difficult. Well, should we give it a go? All right. Third one, easy enough, right? Okay. That's interesting. Yeah, I've got some thoughts on why more hands went up there. And the last one. Okay. So you can see why I keep my hope domestic. Because generally, I think about 80% of people in the room are not on board with any of these ideas. You're not really serious about this, are you? You're not really. We are absolutely nowhere because you're not serious about it. And we cannot solve climate change for one simple reason. But hope. We can mitigate the damage. And we must do all we can to do that. We must work hard these 3 days. We must work tirelessly for the rest of our lives, for our lives. Because a 2% rise in global temperatures is better than a 1% rise. Millions of animals and millions of humans will be saved. So we must keep hope alive, however you choose to define it. I'm missing a slide.
Thank you, Andy.
Most welcome.
I'm actually looking forward to gathering some feedback at the end of this day. Okay, thank you again.